seen on my little. I am 20 years in Minnesota after 30 years in the Air Force. And before that, 28 years in Minnesota. So I've come full circle and always knew I'd come back to Minnesota. I worked at the Masonic Hospital at the University of Minnesota, got hooked on end of life care, palliative care, pain relief, that kind of stuff. That led me into ethics. So throughout my 30 years in the Air Force, I always migrated towards opportunities where I would be able to take care of people at the end of life and with cancer or oncology nurse work. And then I started teaching ethics probably in 1980. And in 88, I came back from England to the United States and really jumped in with both feet then. And that's when biomedical ethics was alive and well. So we'll talk a little about that during the talk. When I got out of the Air Force, ANA asked me if I would work with them because they were dealing with Guantanamo at the time. And I was the ethics consultant to the Air Force Surgeon General. So I was familiar with the military rules of engagement in places like Guantanamo. And then one thing led to another in the Center for Ethics and Human Rights where I worked. And it was time to rewrite the Code of Ethics, which, as you know, we do every 10 years. And so in 2015, we rewrote the Code of Ethics. And my job in that was to coordinate the work of about 40 volunteers around the country and then edit it and end up preparing it in one voice. The edition before that had been written by committees for each of the provisions, and it read like that. They were very different one to the other, so that we wanted it to flow better. So I ended up editing the whole thing and pulling it together in one voice. And then 10 years later, when it was time to do it again, they invited me to help again. And so I worked with another 40 people at least, and we put together the 2025 Code of Ethics, finding out at that time that there was too much material to cram into 9 provisions. So a 10th provision was put together to handle the expanded work that nursing is doing. It sort of consumes my life and I love it. And it's in the news every day. And looks like I'm going to be working with it for many, many more years. All right, so you see this, the beating heart of nursing ethics. Depending on how old you are, where you went to school, and which ethics courses you took, which philosophy courses. Some of you said, oh, I remember I took a philosophy course. I think it was a Friday afternoon, and I was able to skip it most of the time, but it was an easy A. Or don't remember anything about it at all. But then ethics became a little bit more popular to talk about and to teach. And Beecham and Childress, with their book Biomedical Ethics, jumped in, and it became sort of the Bible of ethics across our country in healthcare. And we'll talk about what that did to nursing ethics and why that's interesting to learn about and really important to know. All right, nursing ethics. This is adapted from the talk that Marcia and I did, which was 4 hours. And Kath said I only had 2 hours tonight, so I'm going to really rip through some of this stuff. But Marcia flew out from California. She wrote the book on nursing ethics, which I will show you at the end of the presentation. It was sitting here, but it's no longer with us. The objectives, foundations and origins of nursing ethics. It's a thing. It started sometime. We need to learn about that. 6 moral relationships in nursing, and I bet you all of you could list them. And then identify the links between the Code of Ethics for nurses and nursing ethics. So there are links, close ones. Yes, there is a nursing ethics. Why is that? Is that green thing in your picture or not?
I don't see a green thing.
It says your screen sharing. Stop sharing. It's in the middle of my screen.
Oh, we
Anyway,
don't
it's
see it.
okay, good. Century older than bioethics. A century is how many years, folks? 100. Yeah, it's a lot older. So the unexpected happened to those of us in teaching, to those of us working with ethics. There over 50 years, and I've been a nurse over 50 years, as have many of you. We identify information to teach. We scrounge around and find new information. We teach it. We then redo it for the next year. We gather the materials to teach again, and people write about ethics and publish it, and we read and incorporate those teachings. And here are a sample of some of the books on the side there. This one, how could I put this? This is the Catherine Densford book called Ethics for Modern Nurses. And that book is from 1946. So one of our own Minnesotans was one of the major authors in nursing ethics. But most textbooks of nursing ethics, like the ones on the shelf there, had either the first or the last chapter on ethics. And so the information was interesting to see why it was placed where it was. Nursing ethics is grounded in the values, virtues, duties, reason for being, and the perspectives of nursing. So we have many values, many virtues. They are not all the same for all of us, and that's okay. But nursing ethics is grounded in them and has been over the years. It's a distinct field of inquiry and applied professional ethics that reflects the moral norms of nursing, generated by the values, virtues, goals, aims, purposes, perspectives, and practices of our profession. So that's pretty much everything. In that way, it differs from bioethics. Most of you took courses in bioethics, if I'm not mistaken, because that's what has been taught in our schools since the 80s. Nursing ethics is informed by the 150-year ongoing tradition and community of nurses. And it's guided by our varied and differing perspectives. Nurses from the north, from the south, East Coast, West Coast, very different. Big city, luxury, environments, poverty, all of them different perspectives. We were surprised to discover, and there was a recent awareness sprouting all across the US of nurses who had taken ethics courses, perhaps studying with the Jesuits. They have many healthcare ethics courses at their universities around the country. And when the nurses would say, I want to write about nursing ethics, and sometimes they were told, no, this is a course on bioethics, but other times they were told, yes, that'll work just fine. They're very compatible and they work together well. And that is our position. They work together well, although they are distinctly different. So nursing ethics is a century older, starting from day one of modern nursing, which is pretty much when nursing started being recorded in textbooks and journal articles, lectures that were transcribed and then printed. It was lost in the transition from hospital-based diploma programs to university-based nursing programs. Now, again, some of you probably went to diploma-based hospital programs. Then you were transferred over to a university. Those hospital libraries had to do something with their books. They didn't have a program anymore. So often they just gave them away or trashed them. They got lost. And when the universities acquired these nursing programs, they didn't have nursing libraries. And so they too were lacking. Minnesota, fortunately, is not one of them. It has an excellent nursing library. Of necessity and by character, nursing ethics begins as a social ethics. And that's mainly what tonight's about. This would be the nurse to society relationships. That's one of how many relationships do we have? 6. All right. 5 influences of the social context from which nursing ethics arises are listed here. Women's suffrage. It breaks my heart just to be talking about this stuff tonight, knowing how close we are to losing some of it in the year 2026. It's just crazy. But women's suffrage, women's ability to vote, the progressive era of attempted social reform of all kinds, the philosophy of pragmatism, back to your basic philosophy courses, nurses as social and eyewitnesses because they were in the communities. They were out there. And then social ethics movements of social criticism and social change, which came from churches and from universities, from academic situations. So we're going to talk about each of those one by one. The suffrage movement. Impediments to creating an educated, scientific, paid profession for women outside of domestic service or the home. So how do you get things changed? By law. How do you get laws passed? By voting and electing people who will change those laws. So until women got the vote, nurses were in a really weak position. I think of the Pope being in a weak position with his theology. So says our president. Strictures were present. Doctrine of coverture. That is, when one of us got married, we became one with our spouse. Now, this existed, this relationship existed legally, even when I was somewhat newly married and moving to Florida, where my husband and I tried to buy a house. And it had to be in my husband's name because women couldn't, if a woman was married, she couldn't buy a house. The man had to buy the house in the marriage. I could co-own it. But this doctrine of coverture essentially weakened nursing in many ways because most of the nurses were women. Women were silent sentinels. They were often jailed, sometimes proud of it, beaten, unfortunately, force-fed, and other things to try to get them to stop protesting. Imagine that, people protesting and being asked to stop protesting. So the progressive era was another influence. The social ills of industrialization, wealth disparities, labor exploitation, industrial injuries. Think about it. All the stuff that was happening as our different places of work started. Kath, what's the word I want? Factories. All the accidents in factories. Child labor was happening. Urban squalor of all kinds of different things. Poverty, contaminated water, milk and food. Unpasteurized milk. Imagine that. Rampant venereal disease and TB and infant abandonment. So these are seen today, and we call them the social determinants of health. Some things never go away, and we never get them fixed. Philosophy of pragmatism. This is a quiz question, so pay attention. What is pragmatism? Pragmatism defines the truth, the meaning and value by practical, real-world consequences and usefulness. It focuses on what works. Definitely a good home for nursing, huh? What do we want to do? What works? That's why we have so many issues with workarounds. Nurses will tell us, we just need to do what works. Treating ideas as tools for solving problems rather than abstract descriptions of reality. Then nurses were eyewitnesses. Nursing took place in homes and neighborhoods. See, I can't read those words. The social determinants of health and illness firsthand. Wait, maybe let me move this down. Yeah. Nurses created district nursing, visiting nursing services, frontier nursing service, which is still existing today, big midwifery service, settlement houses, and places for children and disenfranchised people to get healthy again. This is what nurses were doing, and they were out there marching. And so you can see them in their nursing attire, being led by their faculty. In 1913. We have a very, very proud tradition. So the social gospel movement is the fifth thing, and that's the religious arm that influenced nursing, and largely religious. See, that word is beyond me. Protestant, many denominations, all denominations jumped in and had committees and helped the people in their neighborhoods and their congregations. Catholic social teaching was a big deal, and there was also Jewish social ethics, which of course wasn't part of the social gospel movement, but was every bit as powerful. The academic arm was the social ethics movement in varying configurations. So who do we have here? A pope, you say? How quick? This is Leo the 13th. This is the reason Leo the 14th chose his name. This guy was a Catholic social teaching guru. And he worked for the common good, human dignity, options for the poor, solidarities, and universal destination of goods. Pretty impressive. And he wrote something called Rerum Novarum, which is a document that we still pay attention to today. So that is Leo the 13th, a good role model for Leo the 14th. Some other activities were education and job training. Nurses ran those programs, settlement houses, sheltered workshops, get people jobs, training so that they could get jobs, thrift stores, St. Vincent de Paul, Goodwill. There are hundreds of them across our country. Many of them started by churches, but started and worked in by nurses to try to get things for the people they served. Relief, disaster assistance was another area that they worked in. Global farm support, fair trade, and water purification. Clean water is something we are blessed with in this country, and you don't need to do too much travel. Teddy, you could probably tell us what water is like in Cuba, if you can drink it anywhere, or if there are only certain places that have safe water. But in our country, pretty much any community you go to, you turn on the tap and you can drink the water. Direct social services were another influence. Nurses worked in soup kitchens. If they didn't have one to work in, they started one. Same with food pantries, clothes closets, financial aid, bus vouchers. Nurses worked and were influenced by hospitals. The work they did there is they migrated from taking care of people in the home to taking care of people in hospitals, universities, adoption services, orphanages, and habitat building houses for people. Advocacy and social activism was social justice activism, and nurses were right there in front. Civil rights activism was another name, community organizing, and environmental justice. So they cared about all those things that you now see in which of the provisions? Provision 10. So the last part of this little talk tonight has to do with what parts of the code reflect nursing ethics and our social teaching. social justice teaching? Well, here it is. Social ethics and emergent bioethics in the mid-1960s got things a little confused. This is where nursing ethics was lost. Ethics in healthcare became the province of religious traditions, as it had been previously, but it went along with the philosophy departments that were part of those universities. So the philosophies that were taught as part of healthcare ethics were the European philosophies. Education in ethics and health was found only in religious affiliated colleges and seminaries. So then, nursing ethics descends from a web of suffrage, progressivism, pragmatism, theological philosophy, social ethics, and nursing experience. Bioethics, however, descends from European philosophical theories, and it's acontextual. You think of Kant, you think of the other European philosophers you studied, and they are rationalists, they're abstract, they don't lend themselves to nursing. As nursing transitioned into university, it lost its social justice edge. Its emphasis on ethics and moral formation, which was the other big part of ethics in these textbooks, is how does an individual become a nurse? And we'll talk about that in a minute. Its emphasis was on moral formation and its attention to nursing identity, in part because it lost its ethical literature and its knowledge of nursing ethics. So nursing ethics was then found. So you'll find that most nurses don't say, I work in nursing. They say, I am a nurse. A professional ethics, and that's what nursing ethics is, and bioethics is not, because of this definition. A professional ethics arises from within the community, the tradition and practice of a community of practice, like nursing, generating normative expectations of the members of the community. So you could have medical ethics, you can have physical therapy, public health, but biomedical ethics is sort of a conglomeration. It's a gathering of all of these specialties. So it itself is not a professional ethics, even though the people in it are indeed professionals. ICN has recognized this forever. Nations listed as having mandatory ethics curricular requirements were down below: Belgium, France, Yugoslavia, Switzerland, Sweden, Finland, the United States. So this is 1926, 1927 report. So ethics has been around for a very long time as a curricular requirement. NLN, which used to be NLNE, had ethics curricular requirements from 1915 to World War II. So it was an ethics course plus ethics curricular threads throughout every course. Now that's a problem that we have today in education, is that ethics courses are being dropped. And they're saying, but the faculties are saying, but we thread ethics throughout the curriculum. So everybody teaches it. Well, everybody is not prepared to teach it. Everybody doesn't want to teach it. Everybody doesn't have the gift of teaching it easily or well. And they have 100 other things to teach. So to take away ethics courses is very difficult. And threading it through just dilutes it, dilutes it, dilutes it. So it's not either a course or threading, it's both. And if you teach or work someplace that it doesn't have both, try to get it back to an ethics course that they can then track and thread through the different courses. First chapters of med-surg textbooks from the late 1800s into the early 1900s. So late 1800s, that's a while ago. Med-surg textbooks with the first chapter on ethics was usually on moral character. This was everything from when nurses should wear their gloves to standing up when physicians came into the room, all of those kinds of etiquette things, as well as the privacy and confidentiality that emerged from our understanding of nursing in the home. Because families had secrets, and because you were in the home, you became privy to those secrets. And so that keeping those secrets became important for nurses to understand. Library discards, can you see the little crying face? So nursing identity is key to nursing ethics. Formation into the nursing identity, wherein the learner, the student, interiorizes or internalizes, and those are slightly different, internalizes the norms of the nursing community and our traditions. So nurses do that in so many ways, not the least of which is watching and observing the senior nurses in the work environment. They learn from their instructors. They learn those things that we want nurses to not only know, but practice. And this helps people to be a nurse versus just doing nursing tasks. We don't want them just to see it as a job, but we want them to become nurses who are then employed. Nursing has a native nursing ethics that arose from its own soil, and that has grown for 150 years. It was lost, as I said, when we transitioned to colleges and universities. Ethics education was taken from the faculty often and given to departments of philosophy or theology as being better prepared to teach philosophy and ethics. Ethics is, after all, a branch of philosophy. The void that was created was filled by a philosopher-taught, physician-identified medical ethics, then called biomedical ethics, and then bioethics. Nurses wedged and layered it into nursing. And you remember that. You can see it in all the textbooks that have come out in the last 50 years. These 4 principles, if you look online now and you put in nursing ethics, the 4 principles come up. It was taken and wedged and layered so that it was understood that bioethics was the same as nursing ethics. And it is not. It certainly is complementary, but it is different. So what came to be taught as ethics, nursing ethics, had little to do with actual nursing. I'm going to have to excuse myself and blow my nose. The allergies are getting. Sorry, I'm generally not so sensitive to pollen or whatever's out there. All right, we're halfway there. Bioethics, what is it? Most of you studied it. I studied it. I was married to it. I was so proud of it. I learned it from Pat Grisham at the University of Minnesota. It was wonderful. It can usefully be applied to nursing, but does not address nursing values, concerns, aims, or our reason for being, unless the faculty, and Pat Grisham did this beautifully, married the two together. So it takes a certain skill in teaching to have bioethics work for nursing. From a nursing perspective, where is caring in autonomy? Any of you want to volunteer the other principles? Autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. So where is caring? Compassion, skill, clinical wisdom. Dignity's kind of there when we discuss autonomy of the person, respect for autonomy. Responsiveness, family. That whole idea that we take care of not just the individual, but the individual's family, community, their culture, what different cultures they come from, the common good, the values embedded in morally good nursing. Where are these in principle-based ethics? So someone came to help us. Oh my gosh, when did they come? Back in 1889, folks, 1889, Harriet Camp wrote 6 articles, published them one at a time, in the Trained Nurse, and she identified the 6 moral relationships of nursing. We still use them today. The 6 relationship structure means that nursing ethics is not solely patient-oriented. It's not just me and the patient. So many other things I have to consider. It intrinsically encompasses every facet of health, including the professional, the political, who knew, the economic, the religious, national, global. That's for you, Teddy. Preventive and interventional. In 1889, she knew that we would care about our planet. Nursing ethics is both relationally structured and relationship focused. These are 2 different aspects of similar concepts. It is an everyday ethics, a preventive ethics. It's not a problem or crisis or dilemma focused ethics. Like, identify the dilemma here and what are you going to do about it? It's like, how do you keep from having dilemmas? How do you have relationships that are strong enough to avoid having people encounter these difficult situations? So, to clarify, in yellow, nursing ethics is both structural and interpersonal. The 6 moral relationships of nursing should not surprise you. Nurse to family, and the patient's family, the patient in that family, nurse to other health professionals, nurse to self, provision 5, which comes and goes, but luckily we still have it today, nurse to nursing, how are things with our profession, nurse to society, and nurse to the global human and natural environment. And there you have the new provision 10. I have to tell you a little story about provision 10, that I was getting care at the VA hospital, and the technician taking care of me said she was a nursing student. And of course I perked right up, and she said, yeah, it was their first semester, and she was just now having her first exam, and it was on the code of ethics. And she said, and did you know the code of ethics has a new provision, provision 10, and it talks all about our environment and our global health? And I just grinned. And so I let her faculty know what a terrific job they were doing, teaching the code of ethics in this introductory program. It was a 2-year program here in Inver Grove. ANA Code of Ethics for Nurses. This is the normative moral document, which is the document that contains the moral norms of our profession. It arises from within our nursing community and the traditions of nursing. The 2025 code, as you know, has 10 provisions. I won't ask you to name them. Intrinsic relational motif throughout. So in every provision, you can identify which of the relationships, 1 or more, they're talking about. And the bottom sentence is written large for a reason. And that is, it's very important and we often overlook it. Relationships are understood to be inherently reciprocal. I learn from you as you learn from me. We learn from our patients. We teach our patients. We learn from coworkers. We teach coworkers. It is forever going back and forth, inherently and always reciprocal. The 6 relationship structure provides both warrant and normative mandates that are not found in bioethics. such as the nurse to self relationship. You won't really find that in bioethics. Self-care, nurse to society relationship, and social criticism and social change beyond distributive justice. Now, justice certainly is right front and center in principles of biomedical ethics, but there's so much of justice as a principle that is way beyond that and is found not only in the papal encyclicals, but in everyday life. So the relational structure of the code is here. Provisions 1 to 3 and 4 are nurse to patient and family. Nurse to self, provision 5. Nurse to our profession is found in 7 and 6. Nurse to peers and other health professionals found in 6 and 8. Nurse to society is found in provision 9. And then nurse to global integral world, human and natural environment is in provision 10. So now we have time to discuss our next steps and answer any questions that you might have about where nursing ethics came from and how we as a group can take it out and disseminate it. The sources that were used to prepare this, about 100 different textbooks. There are lots of different textbooks every year. And this Ogen article, Kath, can this get over into the chat maybe? This article is truly excellent. It's toward reclaiming our ethical heritage, nursing ethics before bioethics. And it's from 2020, I think. Probably holding it up isn't going to help anybody, but it's in Ogen. So if people have access to Ogen, they can access it. What is commercials? Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. This is Marcia's book, which probably we should send you if you don't already have it. We can send you the link to that also, or how to order it. And that's all I have. Any questions or comments? For how many of you was this new information? The idea that there's a nursing ethics that's different to bioethics. How do I make this stop? Stop sharing. There we go. I stopped.
Martha, this is Patty Cummeth. You always have new information, even though I knew some of what you discussed. There's always some new nuggets that are always very helpful. So I appreciate that. I'm wondering if you could comment very briefly on, as you were going through the review process, were there major areas where the group really had to come together to do that? And we don't have 4 hours, so if it's really extensive, that's okay. But could you just share if there was something that?
Oh, you mean in the code?
Yes, yes,
Rewriting the code?
yeah.
Yes. Yes. Actually, everything from apples to oranges. We had some people who said it needs to be simple, where it's right here and it's like 60 pages or something. People said 60 pages too long. So we just want to identify the 10 nursing values that everyone can agree on and have a sentence or two on each of those values, and that should be the code of ethics. trash the 2015 Code of Ethics. So that was one end of it. And the other end, of course, was 2015 was pretty darn perfect. There may be a couple of words that need to be changed. Well, we have to add AI. We have to do more with racism. There's some things that we knew needed to happen, but people wanted to more or less make minimal changes, cram everything into provision 9. And so getting them to agree to provision 10, it's like, ooh, the code's never had 10 provisions. So those were the kinds of things, as well as some words. Flourishing was argued a lot, whether we should include it or not include it and what it meant. And should we aspire to it? You maybe didn't want me to give you this much information, but yeah, in 2.5 years, we had a lot of discussion, and we had panels of people, 2 ethics people and 2 subject matter experts on each of the provisions. So they were able to draft and recommend changes and explain why they were recommending those changes. And then the group as a whole discussed it. But adding flourishing was one. Having it be very aspirational was another. That it was, nurses can't do all this. I can barely get my charting done. I can barely, don't tell me I need to be politically active or I need to, do this. And it's like, no, we're suggesting that people do what they can at different stages in their lives. Arguing or discussing that it applied to all nurses. You know this line by heart. Every nurse in every setting, every role, every setting. And people say, nurse practitioners, I have this kind of job and it really doesn't apply to me, or I have this other kind of job, or I'm nursing faculty. Some of the nursing faculty said, right on, we need this. And others said, it's a different profession teaching. So we had to tease out the nursing part of that. So yes, there were lots of very good discussions.
And then back to tonight's topic, how did that fit into your deliberations, the whole concept of nursing ethics and what it is and how it applies?
Maintaining the structural element that relationships in every provision must be front and center and acknowledged and built upon and teased out, so that the structure of the code must be the structure upon which everything else hangs, and that we couldn't just discard it because we didn't want to discard what was nursing ethics. And I can tell you that there are probably some who worked with us who, somebody has a picture there. Anyway, there's it's like a little bobbing head, one of those. There are some who, where was I going with that? With the provisions and the structure. I don't know. I'll get back to it maybe. My brain, I will not do this again. My brain has definitely lost its ability to find words. And that makes writing's okay because I have an infinite amount of time to go find the right word. But speaking like this is getting harder and harder.
Well, I just think it's so fascinating that when you look at the early nurse literature, that how recognizable it is to what we're doing now. Even though what we do every day is different, how we do it in relationship has not changed. And that's fascinating to me. Harriet, what's her last name?
Hey, Katie? Did it in 1889 did that?
Yeah. That she nailed it, and it continues to be what we are. And I have to say, I was one of the people who said flourishing, we're barely surviving. And now everywhere I look, I see the word flourishing. So it seems to be a trendy word these days.
Right. And aspirational. I think to be aspirational and show nurses what they can be throughout their career, and not, if you may not be able to do it today, but in the weeks ahead, you might be able to.
Martha,
So,
this is Teddy, and I am a big believer in nursing ethics, and I think when nurses get discouraged these days, it's oftentimes because the nursing ethics is missing or is not as highly prioritized. And so, what do you think we need to do to defend our ethics and make sure that our organizations are putting our nursing code front and center?
Educate, educate, educate. Give it to your friends, pass out the bookmarks, get people familiar with it. Unfortunately, St. Catherine's ordered the bookmarks to give to all the students, and ANA or somehow the order got mixed up and they sent them scope and standards instead of the ethics ones. So an opportunity lost, but it's easy to have conversations. It's easy to look at your own teaching or your own students or your own workplace, or when you go get care, to ask the nurses taking care of you, do you remember nursing others less? Do you remember nursing ethics? And learning it. And some will say, I don't. And others will say, yeah, we really need more of it around here, and helps them see how they can use it, how they can find it. And that's everybody from the director of nursing and the deans, students, the student classes. When you talk about the code of ethics, they will give you example after example of things that are not consistent with the code of ethics says ought to be done. And so then they want to know, what do I do about that? And how do I talk to my professor about that, or my team leader, my clinical director?
Alex, you had a comment or a question.
maybe a comment. I'm not really sure. Much like Martha, my brain doesn't work very well anymore, and words are all of a sudden hard. Um, I've been struggling with my own identity in nursing. I was probably considered like a job jumper, right? So like I went to the TCU and I was like, this is wrong. This is not safe, and I kept finding myself going towards what I felt like nursing should be, what it was supposed to look like, what I was supposed to, what I had envisioned it to be. Only to obviously, 9 years down the road, realize it doesn't, it can exist from within. And I think it does for a lot of people, but the roadblocks are so large
Yes.
by the system, by money, by greed, that I don't know. I guess I was having like a moral dilemma myself, and I was like, this isn't nursing. This isn't what I set out to do,
Right.
and none of it felt right. And so, just you talking about this ethics piece that I, yes, forgot about is a strong word, right? It's not like right and wrong, right? Just maybe a spin on terminology, but like this just brought me back. Just like that's why I've been struggling, is my moral ground in ethics is so strong that I can't even allow myself to work for the system anymore.
Yeah,
I can't.
The code helps a little bit with that, in that it encourages us to develop relationships among ourselves, so that when you as an individual identify something, that when you go up the chain, you're not going alone. And if the going up the chain doesn't work, then going outside the chain, whether it be to Care 11 News, which is sort of the furthest part away, but how to do this in ways that will make change, but you yourself might suffer for it. And the code acknowledges that too. It says some of the stuff that the code is asking you to do is difficult, and it will result sometimes in you needing to leave your place of employment, because you cannot continue to work for places that are immoral and doing the wrong thing. A little bit of a spin-off of the complicit. To be quiet is to be complicit. And so we've got to speak up in ways that are, and then teaching our students how to speak up properly, how to speak up in ways that won't get them fired if they don't want to be fired. Maybe find different kinds of work, but just to have to work where things are morally challenging is exhausting, and it will take the life out of you. So the
Well,
code doesn't expect that of people.
yeah. And then you question, well, like I couldn't hack it. I couldn't do it. Like my inner soul wouldn't let me do it. Which is why I created my own independent practice so that I go into people's homes and I serve them on their terms and what they want and how they want it and educate them and build that relationship through them. Um, but like I could not hang in the healthcare system.
Yeah, inner souls are a good thing.
Are they? Because
You
mine is- no, I
might
know
not
they
feel
are.
like that all the time, but
No, I know they are. Thank you
anybody
for the
else,
information tonight.
anybody else familiar with the nursing ethics adaptation, having been schooled in bioethics over the years? No. I thought my heart was being torn out because I had such great respect for Pat Grisham and the people who taught me bioethics, and to to even have a hint that what they were teaching wasn't the be all and end all of ethics was hard for me. But it made so much sense. And it's not that it has to be one or the other, that I have to abandon bioethics. I still love Beecham and Childress are brilliant. The way they put that together, they brought the conversation to the table in our organizations. You know, I was in the Air Force. I was on the ethics committee of our hospital, and we wouldn't have had one if we didn't have a common language. And so Beecham and Childress, God bless them, gave us that common language. And I learned it so I could be at the table and converse with them. And I could add my nursing things into it also. But if you don't know the language, you can't be at the table. So bioethics is not to be abandoned by any means. But nursing ethics is to be given a little bit more time on stage, or a little bit pay a little bit more attention, because it will help us in ways that bioethics doesn't. And that's with the building the preventive stuff. If you build relationships of all those kinds that I listed, that's going to help when the problems might happen that we write about. The students at St. Kate's just had to hand in a paper on a dilemma, a case study on a dilemma. And Marcia was very adamant that that was not the way to explicate and articulate nursing ethics. And they all said, oh my God, we just had to write this 8-page paper. But they are not mutually exclusive, and they are to be understood and worked with together, so that we can continue doing the good work nurses have done for how many years now? Over 150, huh? We are out there, and I'm proud to be out there with all of you.
I did have a little twinge when you were talking about the distinctions there, because I couldn't tell you with the years I was in nursing professional development, the number of times that we talked about bioethics.
Right. I did an 800-bed hospital. Everybody heard that from me regularly. But interestingly, Patty, you'll probably recognize that of what I spoke about tonight. When we spoke about bioethics, we infiltrated these concepts, and it was not foreign to the conversation. It was certainly part of what we were talking about. We just didn't name it in that way.
Yeah, it was how we framed it that was,
It was how we framed it.
It's kind of like if you think about scopes of practice and how they're overlapping,
Uh-huh.
like physicians and nursing and whatever, that there's a place where they overlap, then there's a place where ethics overlaps too. And
Yeah.
that physicians have, if you look at any professional practice and you look for their code of ethics, a hallmark of a profession is a code of ethics. So each has their own, but how do they overlap so that you can have a conversation and work together? And
Yeah.
that's the model in my head.
Yeah. And I think that the relationship structure is just so easy. It doesn't cost much, but recognize it and recognize that those of you on the screen, we now have a relationship with each other. Some of you, it's a deeper relationship or you'll see each other again. Others you won't see each other till next month. But it's like in building that networking we've always talked about, and that's relationship building. So that when you need something for somebody, you know where to get it, or somebody can tell you that they've experienced it too and how they dealt with it if they had trouble at work and needed to just stop being there.
Yeah. I'd like to comment. Thank you, Martha, for your presentation. But I mean, we talk about including this to nurses and whatever, but I happen to be in committees for a couple other places. But I like to suggest that if there's nurses working someplace, to share with people who are in charge of the organization or even, their patients if they want to give them copies of our code of ethics for nurses. I mean, the other people can learn about what we've included and what we're talking about and what's part of their nursing role.
Right.
Mhm.
Barry, that's so true. They're not on my table here somewhere, they're bookmarks. They might be under there, honey. But the books themselves are not that expensive. They're too expensive to buy a dozen and be giving them away in different places where you go. But sometimes you can have one for like a drawing. Yeah, let's see.
But the bookmarks are inexpensive.
Yes, they're inexpensive.
Yeah.
And that way people
If
can
they send you the
code
right one.
is absolutely online. So this happens to be the scope and standards one that they sent instead of the ethics one. But the ethics one looks just like it. It's just green.
Julia, you had a question.
Yeah, yeah, I have a question and a comment. Thank you so much, Martha. Discussion is very stimulating. As someone who is in academic nursing, as you were speaking, it was just, echoing in my head. I am advising students, and in the nursing curriculum, there's no class, called ethics of nursing. But you have those in the general courses, correct? The prerequisites, the general courses. So I'm thinking, I want to believe when those classes are developed, there's no nurse, in development of those general ethics or, courses.
Right.
And the students, all of them take that course, nursing, biology, social work. I mean, every discipline. So I don't know how, like Mary just said, what opportunity can present for nurses to be part of those discussions. Because the students take those courses, even when they transfer from other courses, I see a lot of, bioethics, and I'm not mentioning people's name, and everybody go, oh yeah, it's the same, because these are nursing students. Because there's no course called code of ethics for nursing in the curriculum, because those are all prerequisites before they come into the nursing program. So I don't know how we can approach those. Another question is about AI. We appreciate AI. We want AI. I mean, the more I personally use AI, sometimes I'm biased, sometimes I'm guilty. I'm like, what is this? You can just put Julia and everything about Julia's intestines just pop up. No reservation, nothing. Just people, and some people just take it as it is and run with it.
Yeah.
I know there's an aspect of AI in the code of ethics. Yeah.
The more that's written, and we're trying to do that, get it published in different journals, different ANA Ogen has published a number of things. There's a blog called Nursology, and they publish blogs about nursing ethics all the time. There's a group of nurses around the country gathering together to try to do just this and get the word about nursing ethics out there through deans who need to get it into their schools of nursing, through nursing directors at hospitals who need to get it into their practice settings. But to start small, that if a nurse on a given unit just does the in-service for her unit and learns about it, just start small and then it grows. It's like the seeds that we're seeing all over the country are growing a little bit. So we're hearing more about nursing ethics every month now when we didn't hear anything a few years ago. So encourage people to start small and require people to address nursing ethics in the work they're doing for you if you're a professor, that they can give them there are plenty of different resources that they can use that are free online. And it's not a lot to understand. I mean, it's 6 structure, moral, all of you tonight. We went over them 3-4 times. They're easy. And structuring any kind of discussion or patient after action report, when students come together after clinical, to frame that clinical discussion using the code of ethics. What relationship things evolved or emerged from this experience that you had with the provider of that patient, the family of that patient, the patient themselves, the staff taking care of the patient, the night people who turn the patient over to you. So it's all pretty front and center. It just has to be called out.
Yeah. I have another question. Have you considered, with nursing education, anything that comes from the Board of Nursing, the accreditation bodies, we jump at it, right? Than just regular policies by the university or something like that. So what is your thoughts about, running this through the Board of Nursing or the accreditation bodies if we really want the nursing programs to jump at it?
It's a great idea, and are already trying to do it. We've been trying to get ethics more visibly integrated into the accreditation and the exams for years. But they say there's already so much information that they need, and faculties won't teach it if it's not on the exam, and the exam won't put it in if faculties aren't teaching it. It's just sort of this devastating pit that doesn't seem to ever let us win. But people are very interested in teaching ethics, and the more confusing our world gets, the more likely they are to understand that this is needed and that nurses need this, whether it be home care or having ice in our hospitals, or for school nurses, having ice in the schools. The parish nurses are working triple time because so many people aren't going to church now because they're afraid to go to church. And if that's where the parish nurse used to connect with them, parish nursing is really alive and well as a subset of nursing. So
Thank you.
And
Thank
it's
you so
consistent with
much.
every denomination. I mean, there's nobody I've ever met who says, "Ooh, we don't believe in that."
I was thinking too about magnet and pathway and certification if there's requirements explicit requirements.
Listen. Yeah, it'd be good to get it. Magnet, we did get ethics stuff because the Joint Commission did years ago. Say you must have an ethics pathway or process when things go wrong or when people have questions. And so when the Joint Commission said we're inspecting against this, then Magnet Hospitals picked up on it. I was teaching ethics to Magnet inspectors back then in Washington. I remember that. It was a long time ago. Maybe with the 2015 code. But yes, getting it at that level so that they're looking for it and seeing it. But just putting posters up, there's a big poster that says nursing ethics on it. Costs $10 and you can post that on the wall of your nursing station or the hallway of your hospital.
And if you see a violation, dial 1-800. Celeste, you have experience with teaching the code.
I do. Yes.
Yes,
And
you do.
well, I think that you really said it already, Martha, about because we can't have a whole separate class, not even a 1 credit class on nursing ethics, which I agree with you that it would be wonderful to have that, but we can't. And a lot of people say it's thread into the courses, but that has to be very deliberate. It has to be part of course objectives for every class. That part of that has to be in there, and then that how they do the mapping of the course objectives to meet the regulatory requirements. It has to happen, and it has to happen as at a high level and down. It can't be individualized. Some people want to use it, some people don't. It can't be that. It has to be systematic.
Yeah.
It makes a difference. It makes a difference in how the program and the culture of the program. I really do believe that it does.
And the question that we as a group could talk about tonight, if we had more time, is does it matter? You know, this idea that people understand nursing ethics and what it is and what it can do for nurses. What part of the nurse work life experience would be better if this moved ahead and was disseminated better than it is? Because nurses are saying we're dropping out. We can't do this. Hospitals can't get nurses. Patients are not getting some of the education they need, or the system's quite broken. And
It is.
what I believe is that nursing ethics can help fix it. And so the more people we get to think nursing ethics can help fix it, and it doesn't cost a lot of money, the more we could move ahead with this, because there are significant problems everywhere in healthcare, whether it be accuracy of lab results being communicated to the patients or all sorts of things. And many of you, same as me, my neighbors call me, my family calls me. They say, is this, they told me that this lab test had to be done every 3 months. And so I called to get an appointment to go. And they said, no, we changed our minds. It has to be done every 6 months. And it turns out it's an insurance thing that won't pay for it every 3 months. And those kinds of things that can help. I don't know. Healthcare is broken. We should try to fix it with nursing ethics.
Right.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I didn't talk about the code a lot because that's exactly what I talked about 6 months ago, right? In October.
Mhm.
But those slides, I think you have, don't you? Did you give them out? Okay. Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you
Thank you,
for
everyone.
this opportunity. Yeah. And I'll tell Marcia, her work is alive and well.
Good.
Is there a way that we don't lose this thread, or that we can email some of this information out to the people who joined?
I can
Maybe
send
not.
an email to everyone who's been in this meeting, just connecting you if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jan, is there anything you would like from me? You can ask I'm happy to share whatever I might have. But I'm easy to find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll send an email out to all the participants. Okay.
All right. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much
much.
for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.